All right. Well, all right. Well, YouTube is telling me I'm live, so I guess that means it must be true. What's today? Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. You may have been like me, or maybe you have not been like me. You might have been like somebody else. In any case, however you have been like, you might have seen a post once by Dave. Apologies, I'm going to butcher his name. Thomivore? Is that the list of things I should look at before I start the stream? I think it's Thomivore. I'm going to look it up real quick because I don't want to be wrong. Hold on a second. Let's see. Yeah, Dave Thomivore. And I'll just bring this over here. Oh, there we go. And I haven't watched this video yet. This game cooks D&D 5e. I don't tend to like these kind of things. What does it mean? It cooks it. I find that, and I don't even know what. I don't know what that. I did see this posted somewhere, and someone said it was some kind of VTuber software that he's using here. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a super. Technology seems like actually might be pretty cool. Like I said, I'm into it. In any case, I saw it pop up. I haven't watched the video yet. I'm not a fan. This is kind of the similar to sort of clickbaity things. This game cooks 5e. Is this? I would rather learn. Like that's the thing that I care least about hearing. I really could not care less how a game supposedly cooks some other game. And I know that D&D, because it's so popular, everything, it's easy to take shots at. Nobody says, "Oh, this game cooks into the odd." Like what? Like, no, it doesn't. This only makes sense because you're going after, going after D&D and all the ill will that D&D has brought up and all the kind of schadenfreude that folks love to get from D&D. I hadn't heard of Grimwild before. I'm doing this on the behind the screens channel instead of the main channel because I'm not sure I want to spend a bunch of time on this. I don't know. This is one of those where I'm kind of checking it out. I'm doing it on the sort of casual frame, casual speed, casual frame. What the heck does that mean? On the casual, and then later on, I'm just going to share on. I haven't shared on Discord or anywhere that I'm live. Later on, maybe I'll do a video on it if it makes sense. But I don't know that I really want to do I guess, is there something like a formal is that even the word? What am I talking about? What am I trying to say? I'm not sure whether I want to do a formal read of it, but maybe as an informal kind of thing, we'll take a look. I had not heard of this. I don't know anything about this. Oh, so I guess I should mention this is a free set of rules. Free rules, the free version. And it looks like, I think from what I saw, and I think I just downloaded it from Drive-Thru RPG, and I'll link to that again. The apologies, just kind of scrambling to get going here. Here's some, what is this? Blood orange tangerine spindrift, or what's left of it. For the working man. We'll see what we got. So I got the table of contents. Oh, I guess I should see who this is by. My broken glasses. So designed by J.D. Maxwell, illustrated by Peryanke. Hopefully I'm not pronouncing that really poorly. Published by Oddity Press. I don't know what made with Moxy means, or if that's something. And what else is that? What's that other one? Periphery illustration. I'm not sure what those are. It's from 2024, so it's pretty well new. And let's see. So it's open licensed. All the text in the book under Creative Commons by, free for personal and commercial use. Use logo indicating it's been crafted for Grimwild. Well, that's nice. A lot of people are really, I think, are really leading with that. And I think it's good. Everyone's embracing this kind of like, this sort of openness, but it is self-serving in the sense that if, like Shadow Dark and some of these other games, Cairn, I think it's another good one. I mean, even D&D benefited a lot from this, of a lot of people developing work. It just promotes your work along with it, because they're all like, hey, if I'm designing adventures for Grimwild, well, what do you need to play it? Well, you need Grimwild. So totally makes sense. I think I like that people are doing it. But let's see now what the heck the thing actually is. Okay. Let's see here. So let's scroll down. Let's get through it. All right. Table of contents. Well, I don't really care too much. There is extras. So I guess the free rules have all the table of contents, gameplay, GM toolkit, adventures, exploration, some monsters, some story kits, but then there's some extras. Has some extra tools, some flavors of fantasy, some character options, and some arcana, which may be something to do with magic or spells, and then some solo play stuff. So you're into solo play, potentially this will be here for you. But really what I want to know is what the heck is this game to begin with? I think actually, this book view I know it fills up the screen, but I like to actually zoom in these days. So I think I'm going to go back to where I can view. All right, what exactly is Grimwild? Grimwild is a game of cinematic fantasy adventure. I feel like I keep cinematic fantasy adventures gotta be. Is this just is 2024? I mean, are we in the generation of cinematic fantasy adventures? I think this is also what Matt Colville referring to, I guess, Draw Steel, what was formerly known as the MCDM RPG or whatever it was. It calls it cinematic fantasy adventure. Hey, Brian. Now, this is calling itself Cinematic Fantasy Adventure. I am sure there's a bunch of games calling themselves Cinematic Fantasy Adventures. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but well, I guess let's read the text and see what it tells us. So, Grimwald is a game of cinematic fantasy adventure. You go on quests, delve into dungeons, and explore the wilderness. It's set in a world of your choosing or one you create together. The key being it's a world in need of adventures. Grimwild isn't a setting, that's up to you. This game gives you the rules, monsters, and adventures to play a campaign in that setting that feels like a fun ensemble TV series, each session a new episode. I don't know what it means, but it says in that setting that feels like. Okay, maybe in a setting is what that's supposed to mean. I'm not sure. And then, so it's not a setting, but it's giving us this is where I know they don't mean it that there's a thing you call it implied setting, or I call it implied setting. I think that's just the name for it. As soon as you're putting in monsters and magic and a lot of stuff, you are granting a setting. It may not be a fully fleshed out setting, but it's an implied setting because you're saying things about how magic works in some world. You are talking about what monsters exist in some world. If you have some monsters. Now, others obviously doesn't mean the others can't exist, but then you're sort of pointing to here are the monsters in this world. But I'm presuming that we're not going to get a map, and we're not going to get cities and kingdoms and blah blah blah. So okay, and yeah, you need adventures. All right, I'm not sure what's the cinematic part, but yeah, that's fantasy adventuring, right? Your adventures, you're going to go on quests, you're going to do stuff. Great. Gameplay flows smoothly. The rules resolve actions quickly, favoring the dramatic over the realistic. It's kind of interesting that they call that out, at least in a sense. They provide a strong framework to pace the game, manage tension, and create great scenes. Well, automatically, this to me is steering itself away from what I would consider D&D. D&D provides a strong framework for things, but those things are not game pacing, managing tension, and creating scenes. These seem to be what I would consider kind of story gamey aspects or aspects of a game, or things that a story game type game wants to control. Like I think of a Powered by the Apocalypse game, or maybe a Fate game, or maybe I guess I would say I don't really know much about Blades in the Dark or Forged in the Dark stuff, but I get the sense that part of it here. So we're pacing, we're managing, we're creating scenes, and we're working in scenes. That to me is not usually what I think about in D&D. Now, of course, maybe there are a lot of folks that do, but already this to me is not. If this is looking to me like when we looked at that, like Kobold Games, I forget what they called their version, which was essentially 5e with the serial numbers filed off, right? This to me already feels like this is not 5e, some version of 5e with the serial numbers filed off, which on the one hand is great. But then, someone, you get the YouTuber comes out and says, oh, this is D&D the way it should be. Well, this is kind of already seems like it's trying to do things that D&D really has never tried to do, really, I don't think. In any case, they give significant creative freedom to add set dressing and even larger details into scenes to play off of, keep the story moving forward, and prioritizing common sense over detailed tracking. That might sound good to some folks. OSR spaces and whatnot, rules lightish people will like the fact of just prioritizing common sense. The story is character driven. As players, you work together to decide your adventuring party's identity, then make characters that fit well within it. You set your group arcs, choose your own character arcs, broad themes that give you experience when you bring them to play and help steer the story. Yeah, so this clearly not kind of D&D type game. Ryan says, don't forget the star wipes and the jump scares. Yes, indeed. Never forget. Never forget the star wipes and the you can always use more jump scares. So again, like this is not a D&D kind of thing. You know, choosing your kind of a group. If we were to place arc with goal, then yeah, that would be D&D, right? Okay, yeah, you want a group goal. What are we here to do? All right, we're here to do X, Y, or Z. Great. What am I here to do? Where I'm here to do X, Y, or Z. Also great. The experience thing is interesting, but this idea of steering the story and and you know, to me, this is where I feel like I'm getting into the kind of story game vibe here is the use of arcs. These are terms you look at when you're talking about kind of narrative plots. You're looking at a TV show or a movie, you will talk in what is the season, what is the arc of this season, or the arc of the episode, what is the arc of this movie? Themes also, in a sense, like what is the theme of this episode? And I've talked about themes kind of on the GM side, is bringing in themes into it, but putting it on the player side is pretty interesting. And it's feels to me it's putting this formally, it feels to me like this is being put firmly into kind of a story game sort of game, a story sort of game. Okay, so characters are revealed through play. You start with a clear concept that fits well within your party, but you don't necessarily need all the details up front. Focus on what sounds fun to bring into play. You can always use the tools the game gives you to add details about your past and connect the dots as they come up, leaving plenty of space to go together into a cohesive, colorful party. Well, I mean, that's fine. That's good. That's pretty. I mean, I'll say this: what I do like, right? It's they're putting they're putting these little tales in here, and I don't. Not tales is not the right word. They're putting these little tells or little hints, which I do appreciate, right? You together you decide your adventuring party's identity. You're part of a group and you're kind of coming together with a group. Hey, you're going to create a concept that fits well within the party. AKA, you are not going to make a guy who's a loner who doesn't want to be there and that you know would rather work alone and live in the dark and be by themselves. They're framing this as, hey, this is a group exercise, which I appreciate. Now, this is just kind of a gameplay little thing, so I don't know how many folks will, if they're to read this, they would kind of internalize it. But I like that they're putting in. I like these notes. Hey, it's a game. It's a game. It's a group thing, and you come into it with a group in mind. Make your person who is going to fit in the group, and just making those things up front, as opposed to something that as a GM that I'm going to have to keep in. No, I mean, if I were going to run this, I would, and you were going to make characters. I would definitely be reiterating this during character generation, all that stuff. But I like the idea that, hey, it's written in the text. You're part of a group. You're not here to make, lonely McLonely person who, only works alone. Things get dramatic. You're rewarded for playing into your traits in ways that complicate the situation, giving good reason to think in character, and sometimes picking the less than optimal path. All right. You're rewarded for playing in your traits. All right, this sounds a little kind of Pendragon-y, maybe. I'm not sure. Inevitably, sparks fly, leading to infighting between protagonists, just like any great story, with characters driven by their own motivations. Well, hopefully, it's a good kind of infighting, and not PvP, knives at dawn, or being stabbed while you sleep in the dark. This is all cleanly resolved with quarrels, a simple roll to move things forward, encouraging, providing a release valve for this friction. Okay, well, I'll be interested to see that. That's kind of neat, though. Again, games like D&D don't tend to embrace this stuff. They tend to embrace, hey, do something about it, and we'll adjudicate what you actually do, and not move into kind of a mini game that sort of solves it. But in terms of a story game, I think that makes a lot of sense and could kind of fit in. But I'm just pointing out because the video that kind of put me on this path was kind of putting this, sort of as a competitor to D&D. I'm going to be pointing out all the times where I feel like either, hey, yes, this is something that seems like could be for people who like D&D but maybe don't want to support D&D or want something maybe D&D-ish, but maybe not as complicated or not as expensive, whatever it is, how this does it. And so far, most of the things here are that this is not a game that the people who love D&D for kind of stuff D&D does are probably maybe not going to be the prime audience for this. Or they are. We'll see. The story is a maelstrom of dice rolls and fun ideas. From all this pushing and pulling on the narrative, storylines and side plots emerge. In spite of the tension, the choices you make about your party's arcs and the characters growing together over time give a compelling reason to stay together and focused. It's a TV show that you're the main characters of, messy and fun and full of surprises. So, like I said, we're right firmly kind of story game thing. Like you look at it like it's a TV show and you're doing that, which not how, I don't think that's how most people who are playing D&D come about. Think about their gaming, think about their campaign as it's like we're playing a TV show. I mean, they may say that, oh, hey, like if you were to ask someone, what is role playing? Well, it's like, you're running, but I mean, in terms of literally as you're playing the game, thinking about it like it's a TV show. Like I don't, if I'm in Daniel's game on Thursdays and we're playing ODD, I'm not thinking about it like, oh, it's like we're playing Firefly, but like, no, it's like I'm trying to get in the feel about what's going on in the fiction, not with that level of sort of meta thinking of, oh no, it's like in a TV show in which we're doing whatever. It's an interesting way of thinking about it. That's not the kind of vibe that I tend to be looking for, unless we were playing a game that's some kind of tongue in cheek, like Toon or something, where it's kind of like you're playing as if we're literally playing in TV show. But I'm just reading the thing. I don't know super much about it. Hey, Ian. Getting started. Oh, okay. Do I need to getting started? Well, we could say I don't want to read this thing all the way through, but I do want to try to get at least the really core stuff. So I'm going to scroll by. If you're here or later on, if you've read Grimwild and you know more about it and you see somewhere I missed or goofed, because there's some context that I rolled over. First, I apologize for missing said context, and second, let me know. All right, so okay, thematically, Grimwild draws heavily on the heroic fantasy of D&D and wears its influence on its sleeve. It's especially rooted in modern D&D from 3rd edition onwards. That doesn't inspire me. All right. Inspiration was all taken from Dungeon World. I think that makes a lot of sense. And its many descendants like Unlimited Dungeons, Chasing Adventure, Homebrew World, and Stonetop. I'm not familiar with any of those other than Dungeon World from that second list. Oh, okay. So the Moxy system is, I guess, the mechanical system that Grimwild's built on. I see. So that's why I said built in Moxy. I got you. And those biggest influences are Burning Wheel, Cortex, Blades in the Dark, and Fate. So yeah, we are. So thematically, so it's doing heroic fantasy. So that's your D&D stuff. But you get that, and that might even just be kind of a set dressing or sort of right theming kind of thing. You go under the lid, and it's Dungeon World. It's Burning Wheel, it's Cortex Prime, it's Blades in the Dark, and it's Fate. So yeah, this is story game through and through. You're not fooling me. I mean, not that you're trying to, Grimwald. Grimwald, like it's not what is it, the the crimes of Grimwald. No, sorry, Grimwild. All right, I'm gonna. Okay, so we got some conventions. Okay, system terms are bolded. There's a pool. Some kind of dice pool, I'm guessing, a diminishing pool. They use D66 for tables. There's something called a crucible, which is a D66 table for a few words. So basically one of those, I forget, like a pivot table, I think they're called. So we'll see them when we see them. The reader is going to respond, or addresses the reader as you. That's fine. And then we get the Moxy system in chapters 1 or 2. Okay, great. I'm not familiar with the Moxy system, so I'll probably spend a bit of time working through that, but we'll see. Okay, so yeah, GM moves. Yep, so right, definitely that's straight out of your kind of Powered by the Apocalypse PBTA type thing. GM moves as tools and guiding principles to act as the world and pace the story. Impact moves hit the PCs with direct consequences. So maybe, okay, so we got a little bit of merge. So GM tools and moves are the things you usually see in Apocalypse World and related games, which are the PCs do something and you look to see at the move that is the kind of or that would match what they're doing or be kind of a consequence. I'm sure I'm explaining this poorly, but basically everything works as the world reacts to the PCs. So the PCs are kind of front and center. They do something. Oh, there are goblins along, you have to run through a hallway, but there are goblins looking down from a second floor, I don't know, so balcony at you, and you want to run across. You say, oh, that's, defy danger, and you roll for that. Then the GMs might respond to that and say, okay, whatever, something happens. I know I'm doing this super badly, but my PBTA skills are not very strong. But in any case, the kind of collection of stuff that a GM does is called GM moves, and they're usually, like I said, responses to stuff that the player's doing. Hey, Jason, didn't miss too much, I don't think. But we have impact moves, which to me would seem like just the same as GM moves, but I guess they're saying here GM moves are tools and guiding principles, and the impact moves are the direct consequences. They require prompting and foreshadowing, grim rolls, spending suspense, gain from making suspense moves, or holding off on making a prompted impact move. Okay, there's a lot going on in there. Seems like there's some kind of meta currency. There have been some games I've noticed lately that are doing this. It's not new, but Dune has kind of a meta currency that that's used that you get as a GM and you can trade it in to do something. So the PCs do something, they goof, you get some meta currency. Okay, Brian's saying soft and hard GMs. Okay, thanks. So I guess my confusion is because instead of using that, they split them up. And so Dune has kind of a meta currency. So as the PCs do something like they fail, you as a GM start building up a pool of this meta currency, and you can spend it to do things. And I think also a Daggerheart has a similar thing where, okay, I think it's basically similar. I think if you're rolling those 2 dice and not the hope, but the other one, despair, whatever it's called, fear, I think if you fear is the higher die roll, then you do something with fear. And I think at least one of the things that happens when you do that, or the GM has a choice, I don't remember, is they can get fear as a meta currency they can spend later. So this idea of having these meta currencies. Now, the issue they can come up with that sometimes is, as players, and I don't know what Daggerheart, because Daggerheart, you have to roll 2 dice when you're doing things. So if you're rolling dice to do things, inevitably there's a 50-50 chance, I think, that you're going to get a fear result, which means you got a pretty good chance of being able to generate fear often. Other games, it works a little bit differently. And I remember talking to Daniel about this, and he, having, I think, run one of those games, had that experience of the players just start to figure out, well, if I do these things, X, Y, or Z, I'm going to potentially generate this fear, whatever the GM meta currency is, to make trouble. But if I do A, B, and C, I can kind of be safe a lot. So we can play the safe role, and I'm not just not going to do X, Y, or Z. I'm going to do as little as possible so that the GM gets as little fear as possible, or whatever that meta currency is. But the flip side of that, just from a game perspective, it can kind of, if you're playing by the rule of, well, I can't do this thing because I don't have the meta currency to spend on it, then the game can kind of get boring because the GM can't really push what's happening because they don't have the meta currency, because the players have used as a strategy to starve them of those points. Now, like I said, I don't know much, and I haven't watched the Christmas Daggerheart special. I tried to watch a little bit of it, and I just couldn't get into it, so I switched it off. I might have to go back and check it out again because I just wanted to see the mechanics in action. But in any event, maybe I would say maybe Daggerheart, because I feel like you have to roll. There's so much opportunities to generate fear. Maybe it doesn't happen for that, but it could be an issue. Brian says, playing it safe ain't playing heroic, faux pas. Right. But then there's also, you want to succeed. And I could see, especially if it came down to the wire, maybe you go, oh gosh, if I really do this thing, I can't take another whatever it is, so I'll play it safe. But yeah, I mean, there's a place for it, for maybe turtling up a bit. But yes, if you do that all the time and that's kind of your main mode, then yeah, you're kind of going against theme. Absolutely. You are trying to play a hero. So don't play small, go for it. Okay, so here we have another thing. Make story rolls to disclaim decision making and use the GM crucible to help come up with ideas. I have no idea what that's going to be. Control the camera to create a cinematic feel. I don't like that at all. But again, we're going with this kind of TV thing. They really are kind of pushing hard this idea that you're running a TV show, which I don't like, but that's just me. Use diminishing pools to create and track tension and challenges to represent the toughest, most interesting obstacles PCs face. Okay, so we got that. All right, so there's a lot going on. So Grimwild is built with the Moxy rule set designed for cinematic gameplay. Right, zoom, focus, dolly. Yeah, where's the grips? Have the writers gone on strike? Where's my trailer? I'm not coming out of my trailer till you get me a coffee. The heart. Okay, so Grimwild is built on Moxy, which is at its heart a narrative collaboration rule set. Again, this is not at all D&D, so I don't know. I'm not sure, again, why Dave Thomavor, other than the obvious, is you want for the algorithm, and I should probably do a video. Everyone's doing videos on D&D and YouTube, so I should probably do my own. But whatever, to get attention, I should say. It's not really the algorithm. It's all about creating a shared imagination space, managing the spotlight, and diving into narration. And this is not. I can already feel this is just not for me personally. The rules will get you halfway there. The other half is in your hands. Okay, so play cinematically. Trust in the collaborative process. Everyone at the table adds details into the story. You have to work together and play off each other or the game, and the story you're telling will fall flat. Or the game, sorry, and the story you're telling will fall flat. Use the camera, your shared imagination. I'm really disliking this use of camera. Each player has two perspectives, from your character and as the audience watching this TV show. Oh gosh, they really are just leaning in on this. See, to this point, I almost feel like just make it a TV show. This to me would hit totally different if it's like you guys are a cast trying to make your own Game of Thrones type game, but there's no script and you're told to ad lib and everything's like I would totally run with that and be like, all right, cool. We're actors and we're gonna be playing these characters and we have these goals for the episode. Like I would just lean into that, but don't tell me, for me anyway, personally, and just put it all in this language like I'm switching between the audience and the character. I personally just do not like it. But maybe the rules have nothing to do with this. Maybe this is, I mean, I assume this is all trying to get us in the zone or to kind of get into a position to be open to receive the rules, but man, it's closing me up because I do not like. Tell us what it looks like before and after your rolls. I think that's a good one. Give details about what you do. Don't just leave it all broad statements. That's excellent. Oh, we don't need to zoom in and out, but they're going to give it to us anyway. I use the camera. I'm you know what? I'm not even going to read that stuff when I start to read. Use the camera or zoom in out or any of that other stuff. Yeah, bring in the boom mic. Yeah, boom mic's in the shot. Move out of the way. Go to cut the commercial. I'm just not going to read them because it's bothering me. Plain good faith. All right, this should be good. Don't be a weasel. Separate player and character knowledge. Use the meta channel sparingly. I don't even want to know what that is. And then know the rules. That's fine. Separate player and character knowledge is interesting because it's telling us up here, you're the character and the audience. The audience would be the meta. So I don't know. Now it's saying separate them. Okay, but I guess what it's saying is don't keep secrets from each other. Keep them from characters. That's fine, but it's not. It doesn't. Even actors oftentimes on shows or movies will not be given full scripts or with everything because they want it to be separate, because they don't want the actor to accidentally inform their character portrayal of what's going on with everybody. They want to harness that unknown that the actor slash character doesn't know. And these are professionals and they will still do that at times. There are famous stories. I think the last ones I'm reading was about it might have been about shoot, I forget what show was it. Was it Succession had some of that where they gave the actors kind of incomplete knowledge and kind of and sort of set them up so that they could really film and get kind of true the sort of reactions from them. I guess maybe my favorite example of this that I know of is if you've seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the 70s version with Gene Wilder, the scene where they go into the factory floor for the first time, the one that's got the chocolate river and the waterfall and all that, they didn't show anybody, maybe Gene Wilder, but I don't even remember that part, but the kids especially, and I think the parents, they didn't show them that room. So when they go to film the scene, the camera's up front, they open those black doors and they walk in, you're seeing all the kids, and I would imagine, I think the parents also, their expressions of, you're seeing this for the first time, right? Wow. And I believe that because it's hard, even sometimes as a GM, I don't have a problem. I encouraged my players when I was running my, my Discord game is, hey, use a separate channel. I won't go in there. Plan up because it's more fun for me when I don't know. And then I understand that I might not be purposefully trying to undermine whatever your plan is, but it's kind of hard when I know. And maybe I think like, this is a bad idea. So I start thinking about all these responses to the bad idea. But really, maybe if I just knew the next step, or as you give me the steps, do that. So, while it's fine, I think to say, hey, don't keep secrets, sometimes it's okay that way. Sometimes good things can come from it. Those kind of surprise, the shock, or just excitement can come from, not knowing. As a player, I don't need to see all the ends. Brian says maybe the audience slash player point of view thing is intended to be instructions specifically for a group who will be live playing or streaming. I mean, they don't say that, so I don't know. And I would hope not, but who knows? And Brian also says, I often wonder if the crit roll effect will influence future systems and account for the performative aspect. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good point. It is a good point. No way to know, at least not for a while. But I think even crit roll, I think they really try to get in the, I don't get the sense from crit roll that they're, well, I don't know. I don't watch crit roll. I can barely watch recaps of Critical Role. So I really couldn't say if I feel like they're, but I kind of get the idea that they're into the story stuff and they're not. I mean, obviously I know it's a production but I don't know, or I wonder, I don't know, because there's always been those stories of, oh, is it really, live playing, or is it more of a performance? And obviously they're performing. I don't know, but yeah, it would be interesting. I guess it will be interesting to see. But such a really small sliver of the community actually live plays. But I can't imagine making rule sets specifically for the live playing crowd. I mean, man, you're really talk about a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. Play to tell a story. Think of the game as a series of improv prompts posed by yourself in the rules. When you respond to them, consider the following. What would my character do? What would make for a cool scene? What would move the story forward? What opens the door to get others involved? No. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. Okay, this is, I'm editorializing a lot, but this is my stream, so I will do what the heck I like. No, not what would make for a cool scene. I mean, obviously, I guess this is what the game wants us to do, which I guess is fine, but no. And no, I'm not down with that one. I feel like this one's interesting. Like, I think you should always try to play towards the group. Like, if there's something you could do that is a group thing, like I can go and try to, you're the thief and you say, I could go try to do this whole thing in the house by myself, or you could choose to do it with the group setting. Yeah, you should go with the group setting. But I think that's more of like, hey, just lean towards, but I don't know about, I guess it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. No, my game is definitely not cool. Brian asked if I've seen the niche systems on itch. Brian, I will have you know, I have some niche systems on itch. They can get fringy. They can. But this is, I feel like this thing's going for more mass market appeal than that. If this were like a 5-pager that was thrown up on itch, I think this is going for something bigger. But yes, they can get very fringy, but I think this is not that. I don't think. I think if you, I imagine, having talked to these folks, hey, are you trying to aim for a fringy itch digital thing? They would say that their aspirations were bigger than that. Don't talk yourself out of fun. That's a good idea. Open the doors and step through them. That's not bad work. The spotlight. There's no turn order of any kind, but there is screen time. Ugh, stop. I do like the idea that, yeah, just let other people get involved, encourage other people to get involved. I guess that's what that means, which is good. This is really not a bad thing. I think I'm just on the story forward stuff. Don't play to win, play to tell stories. I don't know. I mean, people will say there's no winning in D&D, which is true. Ultimately, you just keep campaigning until you just run out of steam or you die or everybody quits or whatever. But you do win scenarios. There are win conditions basically to adventures or campaigns or sessions. I know I can come out thinking like, yeah, we won that session, or oh man, we got our butts kicked that session. I don't think there's anything wrong with play to win. And I think there's something that just for me and my style would get frustrating if I was playing with a bunch of players who could do the thing that would result in us getting one of those wins. And instead they switch it up to tell stories. This to me reminds me of some of the people it's just not my style of gaming. Like that will invent. I'm sure I've mentioned it. I was playing in a game and one of the guys, the other fellow players, just decided to do things kind of just to make trouble. And I think for them, it's like a good thing. Like, oh, I'm adding complications and haha. But for me, it's like, I want to try to succeed in this one shot. Like I'm trying to, we have a mission to do and I'd like to do it, finish it. I'd like to win it. I'd like to succeed at the mission, rescue the prince. I'd like to rescue the prince if I can. and someone who is taking a situation that's pretty much solved and throwing a monkey wrench in the works because haha, that's I don't enjoy that. And if that's what this would be, like, no, I want to tell the story of this guy is whatever, and like, so he throws the monkey wrench, and that's gonna annoy me. But like I said, as I've been saying, I do not think this is a game for me. Play characters that grow. This is good. Leave lots of blank space. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to stay the same. Make time for smaller moments and do stuff. That's fine. I'm not, in games. This is definitely a style thing. I don't think I've played a game where I've really been invested and wanted to do small moments, like those kind of like, hey, I see this sometimes. People talk about. I'd like to have a campfire scene where the PCs talk about their issues or whatever. And it's like I can't say. Maybe I'm just there's certain kind of games that I'm just not in a huge fan of, and that kind of thing. Maybe I don't know if I've played a game where I felt like it's. I'm sure it has happened organically, where we have a moment and something happens, but I don't know. I'm not yearning to have. Let's have spend an hour in small moments, kind of thing. Okay, so we have our character sheet here. Gem Melik. Scarred up face, missing a tooth, tired, too many battles. I hear you, Gem. Brawn is 3, agility's 2, wits is 1, presence is 2. I don't know what that means. I mean, their numbers and those are their ability scores, obviously. There's something called bloodied. I don't know what 4D healing pool is. 4 dice, I guess. Sure. And there's something called rattled. And I guess they're bloodied because that's got a little mark through it, but they're not rattled. So it seems like if bloodied is that condition, I don't know if they're channeling 4th edition with, oh, you've lost half your something, so you're bloodied. But I like these are kind of cool. I like having you can be rattled. But that's kind of nice too. Little, matching mental, physical aspects. I'm down with that. But I don't know what the D's or anything mean. And their condition is they have badly twisted ankle, 4D, which I don't know what it means, but they have some backgrounds. They're noble. Wises, which I guess are skills, abilities, something. Diplomacy, influential contacts, and luxuries. They also are a warrior. Battle plans, military contacts, and war stories. Got some traits. They're curious and honorable. And they're not quiet. You're really not quiet. Oh, I see. Okay. 2 that you are, 1 that you're not. All right, that's kind of cool. I like that. So they're curious, honorable, but not quiet. And then they desire justice and knowledge, and they really don't want renown, which is interesting. Brian says the only time a campfire scene has worked like that for them is in a one shot when they gave all the players a rumor. They shared a bit about each person's rumors, confirmed some, withheld others, and that's it. Yeah, I think that's even a little bit different, Brian, because I was going to mention something similar. Like I've had scenes. I don't want to use scenes. I've had moments, long moments in games where as the players were all talking in character or meta or both, there's a mix, and we're trying to suss something out. We're talking amongst ourselves. Maybe there's an NPC involved, whatever. And those are great. I love it. But they have a goal and we're trying to do something. Are you in that campfire moment are trying to put together these rumors and figure it out? Like there's an active thing to do. It's not we don't have an active thing to do, so let's just talk about our characters a bit, or tell me about your backstory, Usul. It's like I don't Usul, no offense, man. Don't care about the mouse shadow and the second moon one. I want to know is what you're gonna do about these Harkonnen or Harkonnen on Arrakis. Don't wax philosophical about the mouse shaped shadow. You're talking to the wrong dude. Not into it, not interested. But that's a very, very personal thing. And I know there are folks that yearn for that kind of thing. I feel like it comes more from GMs that there are these, at least I'm obviously I read a lot of GM stuff and talks and Reddit posts and Discord, whatever. And it feels like I never see players saying, "Oh, I really want more campfire moments," but I see this from GMs fairly often of how do I inspire these campfire scenes and whatnot. And I wonder if that's kind of a critical role, sort of actual play, these kind of actors where they'll have these moments and they're just talking in character and going back and forth. And people want those, but I've never yearned for one as a player. I've never wanted one as a player. Maybe someone could point to and say, 5 years ago when you were doing this, you had one of those. Like, okay, but it's certainly not something I'm trying to get to. If you have a goal, I think that's something different. But to me, the campfire scene, the goal is just to talk. Nothing, no adventure, no purpose other than having this moment. And at least in my opinion, someone else may have a different definition. So you have some bonds with their fellow player's character. Tarkin Lemris, they've got a complex rivalry with, these are all, so all these bonds are with different characters, player characters. Marigold, they have low-key doubts. That's a bond. I don't know what that means. Why would I feel like doubting is not almost lacking a bond, but okay, whatever. And then Chisella Primrose, they have a tense affection. So that to me is a bond. Complex rivalry and doubts. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of a negative bond. I don't know. I guess it's a connection between them, but the connection being that you doubt them. I don't know, but fine, sure, whatever. Okay, so now we're getting on to some classes. So they have a fighter. You have a core talent, that's weapon mastery. Then you have some path talents. You can have some arcane training. This is still the character sheet. Okay, so they're a fighter. Core talents, weapon mastery. They also have some path talents, and they picked bulwark. And each session they get a pool. What does that mean? For armor or other defenses, when you get bloodied or drop physical damage, roll the pool. If dice remain, ignore the damage. Okay, don't understand. That's kind of cool. They also have measured tones. When you speak in measured tones, people always stop and listen. Declare low risk if desired. Okay, don't know what that means yet. Let's complete the surprise. You can push yourself to interrupt an impact move, initiating aggression. If you change their mind, take spark. There's a bunch of stuff I don't understand, but that's fine. We have some like kind of pyramid sort of thing for experience. Each session take an XP. When you hit the plus signs, you get new talents. So there's no low levels. You're just going to get new talents as you go. So you'll be filling in these path talents. Our group arc is make things right. I'm guessing that there's more context to that because that seems really general or vague. And then their character arc is explore the world. All right. Now I'm just onto water for the working man. All right, so the core rules. When things get risky and dramatic, roll to see what happens. Grab a few d6 equal to the stat the GM picks to test. Roll them and take the highest to determine the outcome. 6 is perfect. 4 to 5 is messy. 1 to 3 is grim. A critical happens when you roll 2 or more sixes. Ignore any cut. I don't know what that is. Ignore any cuts and choose a critical bonus. What is a cut? See, this always bugs me when they're giving me rules and they're talking about something that I'm assuming is going to appear later on, but they haven't told me yet. So like ignore any cuts, but I don't know what the heck a cut is. Okay. Did I miss cuts? I don't think so. Crit happens when you roll 2 or more sixes. You ignore any cuts. We don't know what that is yet. Choose a crit bonus, which is either greater effect, secondary effect, or set up a follow-up. These are kind of nice. I like that you can choose what happens on the crit. A disaster happens when a grim is cut by a thorn. What the heck is that? Okay, so thorns over here. All right, what is a grim? Okay, 1 to 3. So it was grim result. So when a grim, so you rolled 1 to 3. We have no idea what this language is cut by a thorn, but thorns come over here. And then we have this thing called a spark. Pure protagonist energy. Take spark when you add a tangle. What the? Oh, this is. Wow. All right. Take spark when you add a tangle. Well, we don't know what a tangle is yet. I don't think. Roll a disaster. Resolve a story arc or quarrel. Spend it to add plus something, plus a die on a roll. Ian says, I'm having a good time. It's just, maybe I'm too late in the day. I need a coffee. And you're reading a kind of a very different kind of sort of game, and they're throwing a lot of things at you in kind of short succession. Okay. So what is a tangle? What is a thorn? Thorns, 1 or 2 d8s, which are called T for thorn. It's short little, so lowercase t when they're referring to thorns, added to your roll by the GM to reflect a tougher than normal task. See, I think almost they have examples. I think an example of play before this might have been useful, just so because we don't even know what we're really doing it. Okay, so something happens, and I'm going to use this character sheet. Let's see, what is this? This person, Gem's got 3 bronze. All right, so 3 bronze. So we're going to do something. We're going to, bend bars, bend bars, lift gates. We go, all right. And the GM says, you going to bend bars, lift gates? Gem, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. All right. Roll 3 dice. We roll 3 dice, and we're gonna get a grim. We get 2 2s and a 1. It's like, all right, oh, this is grim. Damn it, grim. But it's not disaster yet. That's okay. Now, if the GM had said, well, these are kind of rusted gates or rusted bars, and it's old, and it's it might help, but it's like it's stuck in place. A portcullis, something. It's yes, you think it's old, so it's easier, but no, there's lots of stuff in there, and the mechanism is not working, so everything's all gunked up and stuck. So you're gonna have to roll a d8. And okay, great. So now we would roll our 3 brawn, and we get 2 2s and a 1. So that's a grim. And then we would roll that thorn. But now what? So how does that work? All right, so a normal roll has 0 thorns. They can make it very tough, +1, right? Got that. +2 is extremely tough, +3 is impossible. If needed, they can assess factors. Yeah, I get it. But what does it mean? See, stat dice, spark, thorns. All right. But I don't understand. When a grim is cut by a thorn, what does that mean? What does cut mean? Please, somebody tell me, what the heck is a cut? I don't know what that means. Perfect cut, messy cut. What happens? We add 1 or 2 d8s. Got it. All right, each 7 or 8 on a thorn cuts. Okay. Sorry, I missed this part. All right, so the cut. So we would roll this thorn, and if I roll 7 or 8, which means it's 2 out of 8. 2 out of 8 chance. So 25% chance. You get cut. And then you drop down. All right. Yeah, I got it. Thanks, Brian. I missed it. I'm just too much going on. All right. So if we start off with perfect, and then we'd gotten a thorn, cuts it down to messy, cuts to grim, cuts to disaster. So, all right. So you can't get a disaster on something unless it's very tough. There's no like, oh, you can't crit fail something unless it's got one of these things against it. And then there's a 25% chance. I'm curious on why using d8s, but maybe they do something with that, or maybe they just want to use different die types. Who knows? All right, so got that now. All right. I think they could have written this in a way that maybe make a little bit more sense. I think maybe if you're doing the core mechanic, you could leave out the spark part, and maybe leave out, like, just give me I think if they'd done this, written this up, so just gave me what it looks like and maybe a little example, and then they could bring in, oh, and there's other things, thorn, instead of giving it, because putting it all in one block, I think as a reference for later will be fine, because I'll have internalized all this stuff, and I'll be like ready for it. But you're just throwing all this stuff at me, and it would have been a lot easier, I think, for me to digest if it had just been, here's your basic thing, and then here are some things that can change what's going on. Okay. Whew, got that a bit. All right. Brian says, interesting way around that old problem of the move. The more you do things, the more chance you have for crit fails on basic things in D&D. Well, I suppose. So if you're gonna roll, if you're better at something, you're gonna roll a bunch of dice. Maybe you're not. I don't know, because we don't know yet how these things. Because as you go up levels, you're not getting more. You're not getting more of these. You're getting more of these. We don't know how those see yet, but so I'm not sure. certainly the more dice you're rolling, the more chances you're going to get a 5 or 6, which means that I do like the fact that, yeah, if you're, I mean, look, playing OD&D, I can tell you, having rolled, sometimes I'm rolling 7 or 8 D6s, and I will not roll any 6s. So even with a bunch of dice, you are in no way guaranteed a 6. And then, you have more chances of that. But chances are that if you're, I guess, higher level, or I assume here you've advanced a few times, you've got more pools and things. So I imagine your chances of starting in the Grim will significantly decline. So you're most likely going to be in one of these two. And so then, yeah, you'd need, then if you can be pretty sure you're going to get this top 6, because you're rolling essentially with a bunch of advantage, then you'd have to be doing something extremely tough to drop you down. So it probably works that way. Yeah, the thorns. So Brian says, like, if you're good, you don't get thorns. No, well, I don't know. Is it relative? Well, let's see what it says. So a normal roll is, okay, tough. The GM adds thorns with their gut feeling given the situation. They can make it very tough, extremely tough, or impossible. I don't know if that's, I guess if it's relative, I'm guessing these are supposed to be relative. They don't say. So I guess, yes. So we have examples of play. So we just go to example of play on page 24. So we just go to page 24. Yeah, let's go to page 24. Where is 24? 24. Let's see what they got. Okay. Oh, we got some designer commentary. That's nice. Okay, so examples of play. You tell the GM you want to punch the guy in the face, so he calls for a brawn roll. Confused, you rewind a bit and explain that you're sucker punching him, and it's mostly just to get him to back down. Seeing the situation more clearly now, the GM calls for agility. Okay. With an agility of 2, I still feel like a sucker punch would be strength, but whatever. Or brawn. I mean, you're trying to, I don't know. Whatever. I don't care. Doesn't matter. With agility of 2, you roll 2d and you get 3 and 5. So that's messy, right? Because only 6 is perfect. You're going to do it, but the GM makes an impact move. The guy will be back with some friends. The GM starts a 4D hooligans timer. So again, we're going to run into stuff we don't know, but maybe this will give us the thing. So there's something we could set timers up, which is kind of interesting. I'm curious if these timers are player facing, like, oh, I've started a 4D hooligans timer, or if this is behind the scenes or what. So we haven't gotten to how this gets adjudicated. So it's messy. So then I guess that means that the GM then gets to make an impact move. I don't know. So the designer's commentary on this example is, this is why the how and why is important. How and why are important. Without it, the GM can't get the stat right. On a Grim here, X would have happened. On a Y, on a messy, Y would have happened. On a perfect, you could have. Oh, I kind of would have liked if they explained what the X. We know what the Y is because that's what we got. So I would have liked if they'd given us the X and what happens on a perfect. So let's get to another example. The fighter grabs the orc by the shirt and threatens him, but the orc's not budging. The GM makes his impact move. The price for the horse just doubled. You all have nowhere near enough treasure. You step up and try a softer approach, negotiating with presence at +1 thorn from the price doubling. You 3 dice 1 thorn. I guess they mean roll, but I guess they're just using the dice notation as a verb. And you get 4, 6, 6, 7. Or 4, 6, 6 minus 7 critical. In spite of the price, your critical ignores the cut. All right, so there you go. So that is a way to kind of get over. If you've got a cut, you get a crit, you ignore the cut. You get the horses for the cost of the treasure and choose a secondary effect. You want to make sure this orc remains friendly permanently. The GM okays it, and you're now friends with the best horse trader this side of the Ironback Mountains. I don't know if that's a really strong secondary effect, but that's interesting. So the designer's notes for this are, for the critical, you could have chosen something else. Greater effect would have gotten you the horses for a nominal setup. Doesn't make much sense in this situation, though. If you were looking to rob the orc later, it might apply. Brian says, calling a bad roll a Grim sucks. It does not help explain things when spoken aloud. You rolled a grim. I mean, I kind of like it because I don't know. I just feel like it. I'll say it does sound kind of cool. You rolled a grim, but and I just think it's yes, it's. I guess it is. You don't usually read grim as something that's good, so I guess you imagine it sounds like a fail, but it's going to be pretty. The naming of things is going to be kind of personal. I'm okay with grim. It's more that section just throwing all these different, very specific words that they're using, phrases and stuff all in a row without really taking the time to introduce them is what got me for a loop. So here's another example. You want to climb up this cliff to get away from the goblins shooting arrows at you. The GM has you roll agility and adds a thorn to represent the goblins. You roll a 5 to 7, grim, or 5 minus 7. Sorry. So you rolled. This is this thing too. Well, I guess it's all right because you want to read it and go, oh, I scored a -2, which would kind of work in its own way. In any case, I wish you would just say you rolled a 5 and a cut instead of using the number, but whatever. You rolled a 5 and you got a cut from the 7. I'm going to say this. I'm not really a fan of this notation. This 5, whatever, double colon. I'm not loving it, but I probably will get used to it eventually. You rolled a 5 and a cut from the thorn, so that's a grim. Oh, so it was messy. Oh, I see. So this is the other thing. The way to do it. So you rolled a 5, which is messy, but you got the cut. So it goes from messy to grim. Your messy gets cut by the 7, turns into a grim. Right. I got that. The GM lets you know you're getting an arrow in your back and falling back down the wall, ending up bloodied. You start gleefully narrating how horribly it goes. You decide to make a second attempt. This time you spend a spark and now have another thorn from being bloodied. You roll 2 dice, 2 thorn. So maybe this was a typo up here. They didn't put roll in there. You roll 2 dice, 2 thorn, and get 6, 3, 7, 1. So that's messy. So you got a 6, which is perfect, but then it's cut by one of the 2 thorns. So you get moved down from perfect to messy. The messy means you did it, so the GM thinks on the consequences and makes you rattled. That was one scary as hell climb. Once again, you get to narrating your near demise. It's possible to roll, and this is very kind of Dungeon World Powered by the Apocalypse style, which is essentially you're climbing up the wall, and the GM says, "Haha, you're defying danger. Rolls, I'm going to do this." And so, in a D&D situation, it would be totally different. You might be climbing the wall and the goblin's taking shots at you, but maybe you can say, well, I've got a really excellent armor class and I've got a magic ring of protection. So I got armor class 3 or 20 or whatever, playing D&D 5th edition. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I got armor class 18, or 20. And then even though I'm kind of stuck on the wall, I'm still at armor class 18. So do your worst. And so you might have these goblins going and doing that. And it's a very different kind of game. Is that more, simulationist in a sense, where you're going to let the numbers play out. Whereas in this, it's all about you chose to do this thing, you rolled badly, and then the goblins, in a sense, don't really exist. They're not really there. The goblins were never there. It doesn't really. They are just performing the consequences of your action. They're not. They don't. Right. They're not. In a sense, they're not individuals. They're kind of this force that then gets put upon you for failing. Whereas in D&D, it's more about, well, I'm going to take, and it's also enters into your thinking as a player. Well, there are 3 goblins, and I've got a really good armor class. I'm going to try to make that climb because I don't think they can hit me. They look like they're just goblin minions, level 1 HD, whatever. I eat those guys for breakfast. I'm not worried about that. If you were to say, well, there's 60 goblins all lined up on the far side, then you might go, 60 goblins taking shots? I'm not going to do it. In this case, the numbers of goblins potentially don't even matter unless it would just be more thorns. It's just a very, and I'm not trying to say one's better than the other. It's just a very different approach. Here's another one. You call the guard over to distract him with chit chat, rolling presents and getting a 3 and a 6. Perfect. This gives your rogue friend a chance to pick the lock. They spend a story point to have found some wire they could finagle into a makeshift lockpick. Seems like that's a very Blades in the Dark kind of thing. but using it on the lock is still +2 thorns. Why is it still? I guess because it's well, they just decided it's very hard. They roll agility, getting 3, 4, 2, -7 and 8 from the 2 thorns. So they started off as, I guess, messy from the it's perfect as 6, 4, 5 messy, 1, 2, 3 grim. So they started off as messy, but then they got 2 cuts. So the first cut takes it from messy to grim, second cut takes it from grim to disaster. And this is what the rules say, but it's nice to know that I've figured it out. The messy 4 is cut by the thorns twice, from a messy to a grim, then to a disaster. The lock opens, but the GM makes 2 impact moves here. The guard runs over, kicks the door, bloodies the rogue, and slams it shut, locking it. I'm not sure why the lock opens since you rolled disaster, but that's what they chose. Sure. I don't, and I'm not sure what's going on, but it doesn't really matter. In other words, because it's a disaster, the GM got to make an extra impact move. And I'm guessing if it's a grim, they would have maybe made 1 impact move, but now it's 2. So the impact moves are, so the guard's just doing a bunch of stuff. And just like I was saying before, right, with the goblins, in a D&D situation, this will look very different. We'd probably be an initiative, and then the guard can maybe do running and kicking the door in 1 turn, right? 1 combat turn. I would allow the guard to run over, to move and then an action. He moves and kicks the door. I'm not sure what kicks. I guess the result of kicking door is that bloodies the rogue. So I guess the rogue is on the other side of the door. I guess. I'm not exactly sure. I feel like I'm not quite seeing the scene clearly, but maybe it's a door that opens outwards. So the rogue, so the rogue is facing a door that's opening into the outwards, I guess, so into the rogue. They unlock it, but they make a bunch of noise. The guard just runs over and just blam, just boots that door, slams the door into the rogue's face, gets all smashes his nose, and the rogue stumbles back, and then the guard then slams the door shut again and locks it. Again, it's just different. It's a different way of doing it. But I think a lot of people from the D&D angle, because remember, if we were talking about this as kind of a D, this is what D&D, each our dust or whatever. This is a very different vibe to D&D, because in D&D, this would be at least 2. You could even call it 3 actions. So you might say the guard runs over, kicks the door. I'm fine with that being 1 action. Then it's initiative. So whatever's everyone doing. The rogue's been bloodied, stumbles back, whatever, that's fine. But who else is there? There's whoever this character is who is distracting the guard with chit chat. He's still there. There might be other people there. They're still there. We were still here. And then slamming the door, I'm definitely doing as an action, but I don't know if I do locking it also as an action. This might be 2 to 3 turns worth of act that they just get to do because you rolled a disaster. Right? So, it's interesting. Here's what the commentary from the designer is. Without spending that story, the rogue wouldn't have even been able to pick the lock. Had the guard been watching, the difficulty would have also prevented them from trying. And this I kind of would like to. Okay, so we're getting it now and here. So it really was 3, but the fact that the distraction gave them a chance. Because otherwise, I'm still having trouble figuring out how this room is working. But whatever. Okay. These are the kinds of factors players and GMs must consider when judging rolls and how thorns can affect the outcomes. At the end, the GM's second impact move comes from the disaster. In this case, the GM could have even dropped the rogue. I guess I could have. Remember, this is kind of like we're in story game territory. I think you did that in the D&D framework where I failed to pick the lock, but I didn't do anything to guard. So why does the guard get to come over and whack me on the head, dropping me, knocking me out, right? Would probably get a lot of people throwing dice, yelling things, like what? Like I get if the lock was poisoned and I got poisoned, I get it. But like I failed to pick the lock, and so this guy comes and just beats my brains in. Like what? How does that work? Oh, we get some more. All right, let's. I'm just gonna read. I'll read the rest of these, and then I think I'm probably gonna call it a day with this one. So here we go. You want to cast a healing spell to remove an arrow from the rogue. There's a spell for that. The wizard and fighter assist. The GM decides you make the action roll, which ends up being 2, 4, 4, 2, 4, and 1. Aw. The fighter rolls a 1, and the wizard is 6. All right, so they get to help, which means they get to add dice. The end result is 2, 4, 1, 1, and 6. All right, so the wizard did it. You start narrating. You describe your healing spell going awry and things getting really bloody. The rogue starts fighting it, and the fighters say they can't quite hold the squirrely rogue down. The wizard steps in with their enchantment magic and soothes the rogue, letting you finish your work. So this is a nice kind of narrative moment, right? But the wizard just kind of gets to use some anonymous enchantment magic and soothe the rogue, and even though they don't necessarily have that spell or what, it doesn't, in this case, it doesn't matter, right? Again, but this is very much not a D&D thing where if you're in the D&D wizard and you say, I'd like to soothe the rogue with magic, I think my question to the GM is, well, what spell do you cast? If you're soothing the rogue with magic, what are you doing? Do you have something? No. In this case, it's just your sort of narrative, and you could do that in D&D too, right? You could say, oh, we all help, and then I did some soothing magic. But, the focus here on the narrative part and not kind of, we're sort of hand waving. We don't really care that as much about the practical things as much as kind of like what the narrative outcome is. When you roll, here's the designer commentary. When you roll assists, all the results are combined towards one outcome, but each person rolls their own dice. In this case, the healer is the most important, so they're leading the roll. If nobody had medical knowledge, the leader might have been the fighter. Holding down the rogue now becomes vitally important. Post-roll, be sure to narrate together. That's fine. All right. Let's see. I'm just going to do the other two on this page, and then we'll call it a day. As the session winds to a close, the GM calls for a montage roll to escape the collapsing dungeon. All right, so I'm guessing this is like a skill test. You're bloodied, so you have a thorn. Okay, so that's what happens if you're bloodied. You get a thorn. You roll 1, 1, and then a 7. So if you get a disaster. The wizard in your group rolls 2 and a 2, which is a grim. The fighter rolls a 4 and a 2, which is messy. The best outcome is messy, so the overall outcome is messy. Okay, so it's kind of like, it's a little bit different than a skill roll. It's kind of like you're all rolling, and then you take the best of the bunch, which is kind of cool. Or though, it might also be fun to play around with what everybody's doing, but I guess that's where the narrative part is going to come in. You manage to get out, but the impact move leaves you each with agility and presence marked. You collaborate on the narration. You already have an agility mark, so it goes to Braun. That's mark 2, so it goes to bloodied. Unfortunately, you are also bloodied, so you instead dropped. So here's how damage works. You get these marks. So you mark things, and then on the second mark, they get bloodied. Okay. Well, we don't exactly work, but I guess you're counting marks. All right. Unfortunately, you're also bloodied, so you're instead dropped. You make a 2D roll and get a messy, so you're completely knocked out. The wizard describes getting everyone lost in the tunnels. You narrate collapsing from your wounds, telling the group to leave you behind. The fighter refuses, hoists you over their shoulder, and heads out in a single direction. Somehow finds their way to the surface. Outside, the rogue stands waiting and cheekily asks you what took you so long. They were elsewhere and got a perfect on their montage. All right. That's not bad. I don't mind that. It's hard. I'm not a huge skill test person, but that's fine. And then let's see. The commentary here is, after a long adventuring session is the perfect time for a montage. So you could use this for your you're doing a West Marches thing, that sort of escape the dungeon kind of role that might work. And the overall result been a grim. It may have been a good idea to zoom in on a tough scene as they're caught fleeing the dungeon. The GM could have inflicted those marks, dropping your characters even, then started the scene off. This is a good look at how damage escalates. If Braun wasn't marked, you could have gotten away with just a mark, even if you were already bloodied. Unfortunately, the adventure has taken a toll, and just that last small hit was a straw that broke the camel's back. A 2D roll on dropped is a good default. That last hit was from a mark, so unlikely to have killed you. Even 3D would have been okay. I don't know what those mean yet, but that's probably my favorite of these. So, calling it a montage is, again, putting it in that sort of, we're filming a thing as opposed to being the thing, but whatever. And the last one, you're walking through the library at night when an assassin strikes from above. This could be wits to see it coming, but the GM thinks it's more of a physical reaction, agility. The GM makes it clear this is high risk. A grim means you're dropped, maybe dead. You take 1 thorn, since the assassin has the drop on you. You get a 6, a 1, -8. Messy. The knife misses, and you don't end up bloodied. But Braun gets marked as the assassin crashes into you, knocking the wind out of you. You're both sprawled on the ground, the knife now between you. What do you do? The other thing here is we haven't gotten to monsters and things like that, but the in a D&D type game, there would be stats for an assassin and how good they are, blah blah blah. Here, again, the assassin's more of a force, a consequence with a name. It's just a thorn. It's not better or worse. It's a thorn, so it's got that 25% chance to make you worse. But there's nothing about it doesn't matter in this, at least in this context, if it's what kind of monster it is. Maybe you could say, oh, if it was a dragon, it might be, 2 thorns or whatever, but that's just, again, and it's not right or wrong. It's just, that's a different way of doing it. In some ways it's kind of easier because you don't really have to worry about that stuff. It's like, yeah, we're not interested in kind of hit points and on monsters. They're kind of obstacles to the players, but it's, something to note. And again, another big difference from D&D and how this is more of a kind of story game kind of thing. To me, in a lot of ways, this is kind of like if you were going to play, maybe a Dungeon World. Like I don't know when the last time Dungeon World's been updated, but I feel like in some ways a really much more positioning from this. And obviously the makers of this didn't ask probably for them to do this is the D&D killer, but I would have said more like, hey, you're looking for a new Dungeon World, this is kind of it. And then finally, this designer guidance is the GM has a lot of flexibility in choosing the defense they want to test, and testing the stats is the best way of thinking about what's happening. The player has no choice in the stat besides a soft veto on things that are very out of character. The GM could have made this brawn if the assassin had tried to garrote them, or wits if they didn't want to assume the assassin went unspotted. Presence is pretty hard to make sense of in this scenario, though. Okay, that's good. So we got some examples here. Like I mentioned, I don't think this game is for me necessarily. It's got some interesting things. I think if you're looking for maybe a newer Dungeon World, I think that's the better comparison for this. Or maybe you like Blades, but you want something a little more D&D-ish, has more that kind of D&D-ish, maybe more Dungeon Worlds than that. I don't think positioning this as kind of going head-to-head with D&D and doing that is really showing the game in the best light or putting it in the best space. Because I think that people who really like D&D for the D&D-ish things, this is not that, and they're not trying to be that. And they you look at their, we go back up to the was it here? No, where was it? No, it wasn't here. Where was it? Here, right? Whoops. I mean, I think they're very honest. Heroic fantasy of Dungeons and Dragons is thematically what it's going for, but then you got Dungeon World and all that stuff, and then mechanically, Burning Wheel, Cortex Prime, Blades of Dark and Fate. And I feel like if you look at it in that way, that makes a lot more sense of this than looking at it like this is your D&D. If you like D&D but you don't want D&D, this is the game for you. No, and I don't think they're trying to. So interesting choice, but I get it. You're working the system. I will probably do just a straight up video on this. Maybe I'm not sure when, just as a counterpoint. But I'll probably watch the Thaumavior video to see what he's talking about, and then maybe I'll draw something about that. It was interesting to get a look at it. This is not for me. There's definitely some things, you saw my frustrations at some of the terminology, just the way they're kind of framing things I don't love. But it's interesting, and if you're looking for Dungeon World or something similar like that, but maybe with more, or just a different sort of maybe D&D-ish fantasy theming, this might be for you. Anywho, that is Grimwild. I gotta run. Thanks everybody for hanging with me through this. Enjoy the rest of your day or night or whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.